I've got chills, they're multiplying, and I'm losing control. At the markouts, Image Comics were supplying. It was electrifying. It's time to mark out live this Saturday with special guest Jay. We're talking comics from yesteryear here. Image and whatever else, whatever we want, because it's time to mark out. You know what time it is. It's time for Mark Out Mania. Live this Saturday morning, time for Mark Out Mania. Live this Saturday morning, time for Mark Out Mania. Live this Saturday, we got the whatever. We got the Mark Out Mania. Oh yes, indeed.
I know it's the wrong song, but I'm over here doing the hand job, so it's fine.
Say what?
I said it was the wrong song, but I'm doing the hand job.
Yeah.
Oh, the dance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hand jive, the hand jive.
Yeah, I never heard it called the.
What? You never called it? You never? Oh, okay.
Never.
This is a guy. This is a guy that grew up. This is a guy that grew up in Houston, the Houston area, Texas.
Not in Houston.
Not in the Mid-Atlantic, because we had to hear the Crazy Hand Jive song with the music video on Mid-Atlantic Wrestling for the better part of 6 months.
Well, I heard of the hand jive, not calling it the
hand jive. Yeah.
It
was the hand jive.
Yeah,
hand jive. Hand jive. Hand job is something else.
But hey, hold on, everyone.
Different.
Silencio un momento. Hola, amigos, and welcome to the Mark Out Mania.
Woo! What's up, Pedro? That was a great song. That was awesome, man.
Hey, we've got James the Extreme Sorno. How are you?
I'm doing good. About to live out my Grease fantasies. Yeah, it was all right.
Hark from the sky, Krakow.
Oh my God!
It's the God of Thunder, Zeus King Dark. How are you?
Woo! I'm all good.
Brian Bell, what's up, Brian?
Oh yeah, we got Brian Bell in chat. And hey, from Man Eating Cake Comics, we've got Jay Gobble. Welcome back.
Yeah.
Time on the show.
I'm happy to be back.
Hey, he's happy to be back. He's hand jiving.
Which is not like a hand job.
No.
Let's see. Pedro going cray. What the heck did I log into? Pedro's going nuts. Morning, boys. I'm here for Zeke to speak. Oh, yeah. Let Zeke speak. What was the catchphrase Ezekiel debuted this week? Let Zeke speak or something like that.
Oh, yeah. WWE. I forgot what he says. I don't know. Whatever the hell it was.
About speaking, yeah. But.
Yeah. It's supposed to be like you want to walk with Elias. If you want to let Zeke speak or some shit like that.
Something like that. Well, we're not going to talk too much. We're not going to talk wrestling this week because
thank God, because it's been sucking balls.
Wrestling is awful. You know, if I'm starting to feel bad all the times I've gotten so passionate and angry and gotten to so many passionate arguments with people about wrestling because the state of wrestling now, I'm just like, if I knew it was going to be so crappy and I would find myself in a place where I was like, maybe I can do without this thing in my life. I would have been like, maybe I shouldn't have gotten so passionate in these arguments and stuff. But
Pedro, wait. AEW is breaking open the forbidden door now. Them in Japan go
whatever.
Massive pay-per-view. We can't miss that.
Oh, fuck it.
I don't want to see them job out Okada, please.
Didn't Taguchi have like his ass out on a New Japan show?
No, don't even go there.
No, but I bring it up because it's like they're becoming DDT, and I was just like, New Japan is becoming even this bullshit. So I'm like, fuck it, just fuck wrestling. Let's talk about something much better. Comics.
And what you will not believe what. All right, so I've got YouTube open and I got the live show running without the sound. But in the suggested column, the number 2 suggested video for me for today is the Image Revolution documentary.
Yeah.
Which I've
Nice.
already watched, but
Nice.
that's
Good
why
job.
we're here.
Yeah.
That's why we're here. Talk some image with Jay.
Angry
why-
Todd McFarlane.
Well, that's who I wanted to be. I wanted to be Todd McFarlane. So yes, the Image Revolution.
Mhm.
We
I
all
mean-
watched it.
I saw it before.
Okay.
before
Yeah,
you
I've seen
guys.
it.
I'd
It's
already
about a
watched
month
it,
ago
so,
we
I mean,
watched it.
Yeah,
Right?
I just saw it on Tuesday or not Tuesday, Wednesday or something.
We watched it about a month. When did you post that, Zeus? About a month ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's when I watched it.
Zeus and I talked about it about a month ago. I had watched it probably a while before that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's the 30th anniversary of Image, and the fact that it's the 30th anniversary of Image is a big deal. And
It is.
It has been a big deal, with 30th anniversary, but it's a big deal because, in '92 I had just graduated high school, so I graduated in '91. So I mean, this is what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted, and all of these really great superstar creators had this mass exodus from Marvel and decided we were going to do our own thing. And it was speaking to me in ways of that's what I want to do. I mean, coming out of the black and white explosion of comics in the 80s, where it was easier to produce a comic and it was easier to get it printed, you get into the early 90s and it's like, wow, this is amazing. The people that I've read during high school and all this are doing their own thing. And, it's not the standard. I'm going to say this with tongue in cheek. It's not the standard comics that we grew up with.
Right.
It is Silvestri's Cyber Force is X-Men. There's no doubt.
Mhm.
Lee's Wildcats is X-Men because both of them worked on X-Men. So, but yeah, it's a big deal.
I mean, they were fighting not just for their own creative rights and money and things. I mean, they were also some of the guys that were, tired of Marvel not giving Kirby his due, not giving him his work.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, anytime, and this is a recurring theme with me anyway. But anytime that you talk about comics, I always got to go back to Kirby. You've always got to go back to Kirby and Ditko and all of the early guys that were breaking their backs. I mean, hell, Will Eisner, went to work in a suit every day and had his own studio by the time he was 19, and in the 30s, and it's was making an outrageous amount of money in comics, and prior to Seduction of the Innocent, while he was still continuing to make money, but prior to Seduction of the Innocent and everything else, where the downfall of comics. So I mean, it all goes back, and they wanted their own creations and they wanted to see it. One thing I need to recommend to any of your listeners, anybody that's interested in Image, is I love comics. Zeus will tell you that I absolutely adore comics. Comics are something that drive me. I buy them constantly because my house is filled with them. If my wife was in here, she would tell you, yes, there's comics in every room. I absolutely adore comics. And for your listeners, anybody that's not listening to Rob Liefeld's podcast, it is hard to find anybody that loves comics more than I do. And he surpasses me. His love for comics, is an enthusiasm about comics and about creators and everything else is intoxicating. And whether you like him or not, whether you like Rob Liefeld's artwork or not, everyone should listen to the podcast.
Cool.
That I didn't know he had a podcast, but I will say, if anyone has actual taste, they should not enjoy Rob Liefeld's art. That's just
Pedro.
I'm just saying his enthusiasm about comics is incredible.
Pedro
I'm a-
does not like Liefeld at all.
I didn't like him when I was younger. Like when he was doing the books, he was doing it for Marvel. Like we used to make fun of him. My brother and I used to make fun of his work all the time. When the Image started up, the Youngblood stuff, we avoided it. But you'd see the stuff in like Wizard magazine or whatever, and we were always knocking on his shit because he was so bad. But I was
Well,
reading some Youngblood last night, via something or another, online, and I was just my eyes were just like what is this? He was just there was a masked dude. He basically took his legs and stretched him up behind his body as if he'd been cut in half, and it was supposed to be him jumping at someone. I was like, oh,
I'm a huge Todd McFarlane fan. So and Eric Larson. Well, actually, all the Image creators I really adore, and I've got stacks of comics that are Image related. But whenever I was looking at that stuff and trying to figure out how to do comics and so forth, Rob, the stuff that Rob was doing made me feel like I could do it, and that's what gave
there you go, yeah.
And so I'd look at it and go, okay, well, and he's even said, he has no formal training. He's he wanted to just pretty much draw Star Wars characters that he and play with draw toys that he's playing with. And I mean, I'm actually sitting here in my billiard room and I'm surrounded by comics, but I've got the first Youngblood that debuted in CBG.
Nice.
That the first ad that debuted in CBG framed on my wall.
oh wow,
And I'm
Nice.
looking. I'm looking at it. But I mean, that's what it is. Image started when you watch the Revolution. Image started secretly before Image between Rob Liefeld, Eric Larson, and Jim Valentino and Malibu. And it was their intent to stay at Marvel and just give them an avenue for doing small press work or independent work, because all three of them were originally doing indie books.
Yeah.
Eric Larson was an indie book guy. Then Jim Valentino started out doing indie books, and Rob was just kind of he was the one that kind of spearheaded the whole thing at San Diego, I believe, in 90 or 91 when they were talking.
The interesting thing is, like when you look at how how good the comics were at the time, but Marvel loaded up on those guys. They really did. They didn't understand how much talent they had until it was like, until it was too late. And they, when they all went and said, we quit, because they were like, Marvel's like, telling Ditko is like, hey, listen, we need you to go, we need you to start penciling like 2 books a month now.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's like, I'm like 150 years old.
Well, I mean,
we got nobody else that can, we can depend on.
Well, in
Yeah.
86, 87 with Chuck Norris Karate Commandos, he did like the first, unless he did the entire series, which is only like 4 issues. He did the first couple issues, and they were done really quick too. So for Ditko, and I mean that's in the 80s. I mean that's the late 80s. So yeah, I mean he was almost hurt then, and at that point, Kirby. Kirby was still getting royalties off of DC because those are the only people that were giving him money. But I mean, that was the thing. Image started Rob Liefeld put in an ad for a book called The Executioners, and that ad went in CBG. Can't remember the number to save my life, but it went in. It was I think it was September. think it was September of '91, and that was the first time we ever saw the Image Eye. This the first time we ever saw the name Image. And for people that don't know, CBG was a newspaper, a trade newspaper called the Comic Buyers Guide.
Yeah.
And you know, that was the first time we saw it. Well, Marvel saw this because he described it as like mutants in space, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you can't do that. You can't go and use mutants. You can't do this." And they wanted to sue him for it. And at this point in '91, he's still working on X-Force, and there's no reason, honestly, there's no reason for some of these guys to leave, because Jim Lee's got the best-selling book, X-Men book, in
X-Men #1, right?
An X-Men #1, and that was in '91, and you know, X-Force had sold out year before that, and Silvestri had taken a sabbatical, but he was making money off of characters like Mr. Sinister, and so he was making his money, so he didn't have to really draw on a regular basis. Willis Portacio was on X Factor and X-Men and all this. So I mean, you know, there was no really any real reason to leave. Eric Larson actually 30 years ago this week, the end of Return of the Sinister Six came out in the in the regular Spider-Man title, the not Amazing Spider-Man, the adjectiveless Spider-Man title. So it's the end of it. So Eric Larson's working on Spider-Man right now. I mean, and then after this, he's supposed to be slated to do a Nova limited series. He was getting ready to do a Lobo limited series, which would have been amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no reason to leave. There's no reason to leave at Marvel, you know, to do this and take the chance. McFarlane had been gone. McFarlane had left the summer of X, as we put it, which is the summer X-Men was released. He had left Spider-Man and had went to do a trading card company. He wanted to do hockey cards. So he'd been out of business almost a year when you know, they finally said, "Hey, why don't we come and do this? Why don't we you know, get together and do this, and we can reap the rewards and everything else." And they left when they decided that they were going to turn in their notice at Marvel. They left and went to DC and offered up their services at DC because Rob wanted to do Teen Titans and McFarlane wanted to do Batman and Jim Lee wanted to do Detective. And Paul Leibowitz, guy that was a longtime writer of Legion of Superheroes. And yes, Zeus, I know I'm the only person in North Carolina that cares anything about Legion. Paul Leibowitz,
because I moved away.
Because you moved away. But no, Paul Leibowitz said no. He was like, yeah, we don't even acknowledge the fact that you guys are stars.
Wow.
And so you know, they're selling millions of copies with #1s, and they changed the dynamic of comics for comics coloring, for computer coloring, for printing.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, like I said, 30 years is a big deal. You can't look at it without, you know, the computer color. I mean, they showed up and they brought their A game, and that made everybody else, you know, have to go through and fight for computer colors, because there wasn't that many computer houses doing color in the early 90s either. So, you know, they had to train all these guys. And so, I mean, like I said, it's been a big deal. And then of course you've got Robert Kirkman after that, you know, becoming one of the founding members after Walking Dead and Invincible. So yeah, like I said, it's a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, we all were collecting comics at the time, no?
Mm-hmm.
In our separate, you know, lives or whatever. Like,
unfortunately, I never stopped.
I definitely had periods of stopping, yeah, but
yeah. I mean, I was totally into Spawn. You know, I mean, I was a Spawn mark, so I was like, you know, like every month, Spawn. You know, I tried with Wildcats. I tried with, you know, I tried with Youngblood and you know, some other titles. Yeah. Then I started getting into the Valiant stuff. Exo Manowar and stuff like that. But
I
I was,
absolutely
yeah.
love the Manowar.
Oh, it's awesome. Ham Solar and all that. But I was definitely hooked into Spawn. Hooked in.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it too. I mean, because Jay's a little bit younger than me, and so so is Pedro. Younger than you and me, James. But it's just it really that hit like the generation. That generation right behind us. A lot because I mean I remember guys. A lot of collectors that were younger than me. I mean, they were just going nuts for everything Image. I mean, they were
Well,
it was,
given the fact that I graduated in '91. Okay, so these guys were working for Marvel. McFarlane was on Amazing Spider-Man. Liefeld was on New Mutants, turned into X-Force. Jim Lee's, X-Men. Willis Portacio, was doing X Factor at the time, and Jim Valentino was doing Guardians of the Galaxy, which the first 25 issues Guardians of the Galaxy is a good read. There's absolutely no reason. I mean, it's a good superhero comic. For me, growing up, because I've been in comics long, I've been collecting comics longer than just in the early '90s. So I mean, it was John Byrne and Herb Trimpe and all these guys that Howard Chaykin. Who am I looking at? Simonson, Perez, Mike Zeck. I mean, I'm looking at the wall of people that have signed copies on the wall.
Yeah.
I mean, Simonson Thor. You can't go wrong with this, and
that's one of the greatest runs by Simonson. Yeah, I love the Simonson Thor.
So I mean, coming out of that, there's a stagnant period between '87. I would say around the time of the start of New Universe, which has Simonson on X Factor and X-Men with Silvestri, and again, the Silvestri stuff is beautiful. And he came on with Dan Green as an inker, and it's like, oh my god, this stuff is amazing, and it spoke to me. But this stuff with Jim Lee on X-Men and all this, because like I said, I was at the end of high school, and that stuff, Eric Larson showing up on Amazing Spider-Man did it for me. I mean, I was sitting in classes drawing this stuff. I mean, before that, it was like me trying to copy Byrne, and then it was, oh, well, I can do this. I was like, so then it turned into Deadpool, and then it turned into Carnage and Venom and all that. So I mean, yeah, it really said something to me, and the action and everything else, and it was definitely it broke us out of that stagnant period in the mid '80s.
Because I mean, John Byrne had gotten fed up and finally said, all right, I'm leaving Fantastic Four, I'm going to go do Superman. And,
he was almost to 200. He wanted to take Fantastic Four 200 and then just quit because Marvel screwed him over.
Yeah. I mean, he just had enough of the people there. And I mean, and that led to the the Legend imprint eventually.
Oh, Art Adams and Miller,
Mignola,
and Monkey Man O'Brien. But yeah, I mean that's what it is, and all those guys kind of scoffed at Image for doing what they were doing, especially John Byrne. But you couldn't go wrong. I mean, yes, Valiant did not have outside of Exo Manowar. I like Bloodshot too, but outside of Exo Manowar and outside of Joe Quesada coming on and doing these incredible covers that were going, you didn't really have a lot of action going on in any of these books. You had a standard format that Jim Shooter, worked on during the stagnant '80s. Six panel grid, and we're going to do this. These guys were working off the cuff. These guys wanted to make gigantic shots and big splash pages, and you wanted money shots. That's what it was. It was all about It was all about the action and making it in your face. And I ate it up, and you know my friends ate it up, and I mean we were buying. Hell, I still buy it.
Hey, let me say this. When I remember, like my brother Larry and my brother Nate. My brother Nate's my oldest brother. So we were into comics like my whole life. So I remember like you didn't really see people at school talk about comic books that much. But when the Image Comics stuff hit, suddenly I was seeing, friends and this. Suddenly we're talking about Image Comics. They're, showing off. They're talking about what they got. They're talking about standing in line, about reserving this, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what? Y'all are talking about the way you're talking about like music and stuff. I hadn't seen that like in school. People talking about comic books openly.
Well,
like
I can tell you from I'm in the middle of North Carolina, and so I can tell you that whenever I was in school, I was wearing comic book shirts. That you would have to buy them from now. Now you can go to Walmart and buy them, but
for $4, yeah.
We would have to go to comic book stores to have them, have them ordered and everything else. I was wearing comic book shirts, and I'm a heavy metal fan, so I was wearing heavy metal shirts too.
Yeah.
But it's what it was. I was doing this, but yeah, I said to someone the other day that we were talking about fantasy football, and I said, well, fantasy football is the D&D for people who used to beat up kids for playing D&D.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. No one, the guys I hung out with were all comic book fans, but you didn't talk about it in school. I was drawing. I'm drawing. I'm wearing the shirts, and I'm making out there. I'm wearing it on my sleeve because, like I said, I love it. I think it's great. I think it's a great art form, and I love everything about it. I love every aspect of it. And I had plenty of people that were. You would see them at comic book stores and they'd talk to you, but if you saw them out with friends or whatever, they wouldn't say anything to you because, he's a comic book fan. I mean, it was a stigma, but Image happened. And like you said, Image happened and you had a whole bunch of people that were talking about it. And again, back to heavy metal, it was like, oh man, have you heard the new Judas Priest album or whatever?
Yeah.
Oh, this is awesome. It turned into, hey, have you read the new Image? The new Bobcats, and Marvel changed the way they thought about it too, because the X-Men with the X-Men cartoon and everything else, they started doing T-shirts and hats with the X-Men on it and all this because they were like, oh, these guys are doing something big and we need to follow suit because we had them and now we don't. So we need to get out there and put this stuff together. I mean, hell, for a long time I had a Wolverine pillow. which is funny because all the stuff that they were doing was stuff from the time period. So it's all Adam Kubert and Andy Kubert and so forth. But that Wolverine pillow it was a Jim Lee. So they had taken Jim Lee's artwork and threw it on a pillow. I was like, oh yeah, I gotta have this. So,
and that's the thing is they've recycled so much comic art into merchandise.
Well, that was that. Hold on, I cut you off, Zeus. Okay, no. So this is the reason the Image is created, because McFarlane wanted a piece of the action. McFarlane was like, "You're doing T-shirts with my artwork on it. You have taken my artwork. You paid me good money to do the artwork, but now you're taking it and putting it on T-shirts, and I'm not seeing a dime from it."
Right.
And McFarlane's like, "Can't I just get a shirt? Can I get a?" And they're like, "No, you can't get a shirt." He was like, "Well, it's my artwork. I want a shirt." So that's why McFarlane left. McFarlane was like, "I can go and do a trading card company and all this," and he was like, "I just want a piece of the pie." So whenever Rob got together with him and said, "Hey, we're thinking about forming our own thing, and you got Spawn, we can pull this together and all this, you control all of it." And McFarlane's like, "Yeah, I'm on board." So, I mean, merchandising was a big part of it because, I mean, and go back to Jack Kirby. This is what happened with Stan Lee and Jack Kirby when Kirby left to go to DC. Kirby had number ones coming out for New Gods, for Mr. Miracle, for Commandy, for Demon. And Stan Lee was like, well, he's got number ones and number ones sell, so we're going to put Kirby art in our books. So we're going to start all of these reprint books with Kirby art in it for Fantastic Four, for Fantastic Four, for Avengers, for all of this. And we're going to sell as much Kirby as we can. We're going to flood the marketplace so that if you want Kirby, we're going to have it, because people are going to have to pick and choose what they can buy.
Fucking Marvel, man.
So, yeah. So, I mean, the Image, Image is created because of Marvel, because of the greed, because of all of this. And they made a shit ton of money.
Marvel was shrewd. It was shrewd, wasn't they?
Yeah.
No, they're shysters.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah.
I mean, when you force out your number one creator of all time, the number one artist that's been with the company off and on for the last 30 years, and
he's just now getting his due. You notice that?
Oh yeah,
just now getting his due.
Jay, how many times have I said that as soon as Stan Lee dies, that there's going to be more people vocal about how Stan Lee actually was, and how amazing Jack Kirby actually was and responsible for everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to remember that there are a lot of people that only know Stan from the movies, only know Stan from his later years and his appearances in movies and all this.
But everything was Stan Lee present. Everything, he made them. He made every Marvel book was Stan Lee presents, because that's he put himself out there, and
But we were also in the middle of that too, because in the cartoons he was narrating Spider-Man cartoon, and he was narrating the Hulk cartoon, and the only appearance we have of Kirby and the Hulk was one episode of the Incredible Hulk. But Stan Lee was in the forefront because, of course, Stan Lee was the face, and he was selling himself as doing this. So it's not surprising. Like I said about Jim Shooter, about some things being stagnant. Jim Shooter started in comics when he was 14, and so he ends up becoming editor-in-chief of Marvel. And while he was there, he made some editorial decisions that were terrible, like kicking Roger Stern off of Captain America
and turning it into one issue stories only. We're in the middle of a 3-part thing. We'll start one issue after. No, you'll start now.
Yeah, and so that drove John Byrne off of it, because now Roger Stern doesn't work there. And so, I mean, there's a lot of editorial decisions that were made during that time period. They had made an offer to buy DC in the 80s. And, so again, back to what I keep saying about it being a big deal, 30 years of Image is a big deal, because it set us on a course. I was, for anyone listening that doesn't know, I run a comic book company called Mania Comics. I have a partner named Jason Carr. And so if you hear me say, I was telling Jason, that's what I'm talking about. Jason Carr, I was talking to him, and he's younger than we are. He's 11 years younger than I am. So his exposure to comics, his exposure to Image is always there. Because he's 11 years younger than I am. So, it's sort of like living in a world with Star Wars. Kids that were born after 77 have always had Star Wars. Star Wars has always been in some type of pop culture reference. Well, Image has been around for 30 years. So, some of these kids, that are, hell, if you're 20 years old right now, you've lived in a world where Image, where we had computer coloring, where you had all of this. But I was telling Jason, I was listening to the podcast, I was telling Jason that the money that was changing hands for these comics, I mean, comics were a big deal in the early 90s after Image, And I mean, independent comics were going through the roof. Speculator market was there pre 95, 96. And so all of these small press books that had absolutely no business doing what they're doing, were out here making a ton of money because everyone was looking to be the next Youngblood or the next Wildcat.
I was a fan of the Dark Horse comics because they started coming out with some interesting stuff with the, like all the Aliens versus Predator and then the Terminator stuff. And I was like, whoa, there's all this stuff coming from the Thing from another world. And I'm like, wow, fucking Dark Horse, here we go,
Well, and if you go with Dark Horse in the mid '90s, before the fall of comics in that time period, started doing superheroes because Image was dominating the market. I mean, when the Image creators left, Marvel didn't really have they still had a staple of artists. I mean, still had Andy Kubert, Adam Kubert, Art T. Bear. I mean, all these guys, came up and stepped up to the plate. Mark Diodato was doing like every book. He was doing like 4 books a month. But you still couldn't touch these guys. I mean, these guys' sales were incredible. And
I mean, there were people that were absolutely not comic book fans buying tons of comics.
Yeah.
I remember that too. Yeah.
And they were bagging and boarding. I mean, I remember people you would see they would come in and they were like like coming in from their banking job or their corporate job or whatever, and they're asking the store owners or the people working there or the other people that are buying stuff. They're asking them what's the big popular stuff, because they wanted to find that, because that was another thing too, is people were talking about, Action Comics #1 and how, how valuable it was and how, how much it was, selling for, because it, and everybody was like, well, it sold 2 million copies, back in 1939. It's like, yeah, well, it was also, 5 cents, I mean, kids could find a nickel. Yeah, kids could find a nickel in 1939. I mean, my dad had, he had, all, a lot of that stuff back then. But there were so many people that probably bought comics that ended up, and then after the market, fell through and collapsed on itself, probably a lot of that stuff got thrown away. I mean, how much did Spawn #1 sell?
It sold over 1 billion copies, and it's ranging about $20. Around $20 a piece right this very second. And I see people on Facebook Marketplace and eBay, or not eBay, but Facebook Marketplace all the time. Oh, I've got rare Spawn #1. Yes, not rare.
It's not rare. Yeah,
it's not rare.
I still got my Spawn #1, so it can't be that rare.
So do I. Yeah.
Yeah, so it can't be that rare.
As far as another step on the Image revolution, Image started, and that's what killed Superman.
Oh yeah.
Because DC's like, holy crap, we had a chance to have these guys, and they're making all this money. We've got to do something. So they killed Superman. I mean, and they rushed into it. I mean, when you read it, it's rushed. It's put together really, really fast.
Yeah,
and I've been going back. There's a YouTube channel for cartoonist kayfabe.
Oh yeah,
it's a really
that's a good one.
It's a really good channel to check out. Those guys will be at Heroes here in a few weeks here in North Carolina.
It's Jim Rugg and someone else, right?
Yeah, and they're really good about and they love the Image creators as well because they're all around our age. So they have Ed Piskor is the other guy. They go through and they talk about comics and talk about the revolution and drawing comics and outlaw comics and all this, and because they're around my age, or one of them is around my age, everything that they were into, I was into. So I was going buying black and white comics, and I was going and buying outlaw comics. I was buying Faust with Uncle Tim Vigil, and I mean I was buying all this stuff.
Grendel.
Oh, Grendel. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember Grendel. Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah, I
do you
bought a few
remember?
copies of that.
Do you remember that one that was like I didn't even see it at comic book stores. I remember seeing it at like KNS newsstand, and I bought some of it. But it was like these. It's kind of like these just science fiction ninja guys. Do you remember that one?
Science fiction ninja guys.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You're gonna have to be more specific.
Yeah,
I wish I could be. I'll have to.
But you know, of course, that whenever you set me on a task, I'll end up with like the entire run by the end of the week. I told you, Zeus, the other day that I had a problem because I was standing in the back of at the back of my Jeep. Right now, my Jeep is full with stuff for doing shows because Manny and Cake and I we did about 7 shows in 6 weeks, and so my stuff's still in the back of the truck, and I was texting Zeus, and I said, yeah, I think I have a problem because I'm sitting here looking at the complete run of like Sun Runners, which is a low. It is a small press, an independent book from the late '80s, done by Pat Broderick, which is the guy that took over Micronauts. And
Micronauts! Wow.
I was at a show, and that guy had like number 1, and I was like, yeah, I need another copy of number 1. He was like, I'll give you the whole run. So I ended up buying each run.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, the image revolution started this, but I've gone back and why I brought up comic kayfabe, cartoonist kayfabe, is they were going through the wizards of the time period, and they were going through and looking at the things that they were saying, the speculations, and looking at the artwork and all this. And I've got most of my wizards anyway, but I've gone through some of them and looking at this stuff, especially the image stuff, because they were hard nosed image backers. And I mean, it was being forced down our throat. Of course, we're going to buy it. I mean, we were told that this is going to be great. This is going to be awesome. You got to keep reading it. And it didn't matter if it was late. Didn't matter if it was. We were still there. You said something, James, about Dark Horse. I mean, those Dark Horse stories with Aliens versus Predator and all of that stuff. I mean, hell, Adam Hughes was doing Maze Agency, which was a great crime noir book. I mean, it was really great stuff. That's where the Mask comes from. So I mean,
that's where Men in Black came from, right?
Yeah. Actually, I think Men in Black was Malibu.
Start.
I think it was Malibu.
It switched companies.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just, I mean, that stuff that this is what I grew up on.
I remember buying copies of The Mask too, but that's a long time ago. Yeah.
And for some of it seems like yesterday.
You mentioned a wizard when recently at the end of 2020, everyone remembers Stephanie, her mom died, and we had to do this big move because I had to move her like here with me. Mm-hmm. And I had to get rid of a ton of stuff because I had a room, the room I'm in right now was my storage room. So I was gonna have her take my old room, and I was gonna move into the storage room. So I had to get rid of a ton of stuff like really fast. So there's like tons of videotapes and tons of magazines and this I just got rid of. I just threw into dumps. I just threw away to the junkyard or whatever. But
wow.
I had tons of wizard magazines from forever ago, like I don't know how many, like years and years, probably more than a decade's worth of wizard magazines. I got rid of them all because I had to make space.
I believe mine are in a tote somewhere in storage.
Mm.
I'm sure Zeus helped me move them whenever I moved stuff into storage. But I mean, it's this is the thing, though. There were no other than CBG, other than Comic Buyer's Guide, and an occasional Starlog issue of Comic Scene, because Comic Scene was not coming out on a regular basis. It was the only magazine we had, the only trade magazine we had, and it was the only magazine about comics that gave us. I mean, this is all pre-internet, so we needed to get our fix, and we needed to know what was going to be next and what was the next big thing. And
these damn kids got us so lucky today with the internet; they could just pop everything up.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You can. I mean, if you look hard enough, you could find anything. I mean, there was there was stuff that we wanted to buy, not just because we wanted to have it. It's we wanted to read it.
Yeah. Way out the way. I remember waiting hours and hours and hours on lines to cons, after cons, after cons, just trying to get in and buy stuff that wasn't at the local comic shop or wasn't on the spinner rack, and this is a pain in the ass. You had to dug it. You had to really find some stuff. And now you can find shit easy.
Well, now you can get on eBay and people are selling them left and right. Now, I love shows, and we do shows during con seasons almost every weekend. But and I love to dig. I took a friend. I was out with a friend of mine, a guy that's not really into comics, and we were going to a toy store that did tabletop games, and we were trying to meet some guys that were playing this one game, and so we end up at this store that has wrestling figures and action figures from the 90s, action figures from today, and all this, and they had a couple boxes of comics, and where they had about 6 boxes of comics, and some of them were dollar boxes. And I stood there and went through every single one of them. He's like, "You really like to go through this?" Well, there was a show going on in the same town, and I was like, "I'll pay your way in." And so
it's a compulsion. It really is a compulsion for Jay. That's for sure.
And so I was like, "I'll pay your way in," and we walked around. I started hitting the boxes, and he's standing there like an irritated wife or girlfriend. And I was like, so I'm going through, and I'm finding stuff from this one guy, and I was like, these boxes are amazing. They're $1, and they've got all this really great stuff. And I was like, yeah, I'll just have. And I looked at him. I said, "You got a card?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." So I sent him a message. I was like, "When's the next show you're going to be at?" So we went ahead and left because I figured that I'd wasted enough of his time, and I've gone back to this guy and ended up spending a lot of money with him. Emptying his dollar boxes. Yeah.
Nice.
So I loved it. I love to dig. That's the great thing about it, is the fact that, especially Zeus and I love the black and white explosion. So we love the independent comic from the 80s and everything else. So there's a lot of that stuff that we don't know anything about. I was going through, it was actually Free Comic Book Day last year, which was in October. I had gone through some long boxes at the store that we set up at. We set up at the Free Comic Book Day this year is May 7th. But we were at the store that we set up and do Free Comic Book Day at. I was going through boxes of comics. Well, I come across this small little comic and independent, and I didn't know what it was. And now that I'm from my computer, it's right here. It's called Spotlight. And it was put out in February of '85, and I'd never seen it. There was 3 issues in this box, so I went ahead and bought all 3 issues because, again, it's a compulsion. But I bought all 3 issues, and I figured out as I was reading it that a guy that comes to Free Comic Book Day actually created it in the town that we were in.
Oh my God.
Well, you know him, Zeus, the guy that used to run the anime club in Salisbury.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, he created this comic in '85.
Oh wow!
And so, and I haven't seen. He had a.
Yeah, I remember that guy.
Robert Klein Allen is his name, but he was in an accident. He was in an auto accident a couple of years ago, so I haven't seen him. He's been kind of out a recluse since he had an auto accident. But yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing that I like to dig for. I like to dig for stuff that you don't know even exists. And it could be someone from your town. It could be someone that you run into every day that just didn't continue to do comics.
You mentioned May's agency. And then y'all were talking about how kids have it easy today. I never heard of it, and I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was done by Adam Hughes. It was
his art's very different than what we would think of for Adam Hughes. So
well, the Adam Hughes today is incredible and awesome and expensive to purchase.
Yeah.
But whenever I met him, he was doing May's agency, and he had just gotten tapped to do Justice League.
Oh wow,
nice.
And so, and I was standing in line for Art Adams. No one was in line for Adam Hughes. I went over and talked to Adam Hughes while waiting on Art Adams, and yeah, he was a super guy and easy to talk to and all this. But he had just gotten signed to do Justice League.
Also, I love seeing the old Comico ads and stuff because I used to collect the Robotech comic from Comico.
Oh, yeah.
So I would see all the ads for stuff in there.
I think Ben Dunn worked on that.
Oh God, Gold Digger.
Fred Perry.
Fred Perry also worked on like John Corbett's Space Cadet, which is out of the Robotech stuff. And Ben Dunn is doing some really great stuff with some public domain characters and all this. It's.
You talk about you start talking about Ben Dunn and Fred Perry and the Antarctic Press guys. I mean, those guys are definitely near and dear to our hearts because they publish our work. So
yeah. Well, what's really funny is the other day I was in the garage and I was getting something out of the garage and I run across a box full of Gold Diggers that have all three of us in it.
Nice.
Oh
wow. And so and I was like, wow, I probably need to send you a couple of these.
Yeah, I remember when I showed John Hitchcock over at Parts Unknown, and of course he's a smart ass, but at the same time, I mean, he's pretty honest, but he was like, well, I guess it's good to be the best art in the have the best art in the book, So out of the swimsuit issues and the annuals we did and stuff. So
well, I had said to Jason the other day that I need to pull those books out and send them off and have them graded. Just because and put on the thing that all three of us are in it.
Yeah. Another one that was putting out a lot of stuff was Pacific Comics.
Well, Pacific started in it was a vehicle for Jack Kirby, so it was he was doing Captain Victory, and we got Destroyer Duck, which was funding Steve Gerber and Kirby's problems with Marvel trying to get Kirby's artwork back.
Yeah.
And Steve Gerber had been screwed over by Marvel about 3 or 4 times and had left and come back and still got screwed over again and left and come back.
I think the question is who hasn't gotten screwed over by Marvel?
Stanley.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
well,
Stanley. That's about it.
I was gonna say my name's on that list. My name's on that list as well. I've read comics my entire life, so my name's on that list as well. I bought in a New Universe. I bought an entire run of Star Brand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, without New Universe, we wouldn't have had the name.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, without New Universe, we wouldn't have had some of the things that came. Hold on. Back to our original idea. Without Image, we wouldn't have had this, because Image was the way to make the new universe work. And so because of that, and Valiant actually predates Image, but I mean, without the independent books from Gold Key and Western and all this, Valiant wouldn't exist. But I mean, that everyone should take a look at the Image Revolution that's out, the documentary that's out, and
I mean, they just kicked the shit out of the industry. I mean, they just
they knocked it on its ear. There's no doubt. And I mean, it's still being done.
The thing is, the comic book industry, if they'd have stayed there, it could have, guys like them might not have left to do their own comic book company, but they could have trickled off into just other areas of art and graphic design. And, we could have just lost all those guys to other things and never gotten, the kick in the ass that, that the industry needed. Is kind of like ECW,
Yes.
ECW, while really raw and outrageous and shit, it really, it sent a huge message to WWF and WCW on where fans were at the time, and what fresh ideas that they could steal and talent they could steal.
Okay, Zeus, I have to put you on the spot. Who is the Rob Liefeld of ECW?
Of ECW. I would have to say, oh man, I would have to say,
nice guy, but terrible at what they do. Go.
Oh well, then. Sandman.
It's weird because I am not the avid wrestling guy that you guys are, and I was sitting here thinking the Sandman.
Yeah. Sandman.
Yeah.
Sandman almost has a face like a Rob Liefeld drawing. Now
I was going to say Mikey Whipwreck.
Well, but the thing is though, with the Sandman, it's all that. It's the entrance.
Right.
Right.
It's
the entrance, and then 8 minutes of fucking garbage.
Right.
And then it's over with, and the cue enters Sandman again.
Right.
And that's but he was extremely over. He was really nice at the ECW panel and everything. So yeah, he definitely hides his feet, and he has a million teeth.
Chiclet teeth.
How many teeth in a human mouth? A million? Okay, I'll draw a million.
Yeah, no problem.
But he was so nice to us. Jay, when we got to meet Rob Liefeld, Jay was on the balls of his feet while we were in line for 30 minutes. He was so excited, and he posed with the Kirby Crackle box, and he loved the Crackle box, and he was really proud of inking Kirby's what was it, Satan 6, the Topps comic.
No, it was Phantom Force or something.
Okay.
Satan 6 was the guy looked like McFarlane guy.
Yeah, and that was that's another thing Image did for Kirby.
Yeah, but also that day that we met him, he was breaking for lunch when we left. I mean, because he was out. He wasn't even going to talk to us.
Right.
And we had to stop him, and yeah, we stood there.
Well, he was looking at the Road Warriors, and he was like, yeah, I better wait."
I mean, after us standing there, we've met a lot of people. We've met a lot of people that I'm not awestruck too often. That was it. That Walt Simonson. But yeah, it's
cool.
it's what it is. But yeah, without they fought for Kirby because Kirby, they know that Kirby's the creator. Kirby's the one that was the backbone of everything we love.
Kirby's king. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent my entire life reading comics. I've spent my entire life loving comics, and the first comic that I remember getting was a Captain America Kirby when Kirby came back in the 70s. And it's what it is. It's seeing his concepts and seeing concepts that he created, seeing things he created in like OMAC that we carry today, or seeing the concepts he created in New Gods with the Mother Box and
the bone tube.
And I carry a Mother Box with me every day. It's got music and everything else on it. And I even renamed my phone. I renamed my phone Jay's Mother Box. So when it hooks over to the car, it says Jay's Mother Box across the top of the car.
Nice.
But I mean, that's what it is. I mean, this is my phone. We carry our phones and we carry.
Just don't end up on Apocalypse, all right? You'll be okay.
Jay would be really at home.
I would be at home there. My favorite villain. My favorite villain is Darkseid. So.
Yeah, I mean, Granny Goodness would be. Oh, welcome home, Jay.
Oh, welcome. That's awesome.
We missed you. How you been?
You're hanging out with Wunderbar, huh?
It would be just like going to my grandmother's house.
Would you like a nice like a nice hot glass of flaming plasma? There you go.
But yeah, I mean the Image guys wanted to fight for Kirby's rights and wanted to make sure that Kirby, because he did this. So the Phantom Force, I think it was called Phantom Force, is the book that they had put out that each of the Image creators had inked a page, and they wanted to make sure that he had the money. And that was right before he died.
Yeah.
So
let me ask you a question, Jay, if you don't mind.
What's up?
Outside of Spawn, what do you think Image's best book was?
Modern or?
Well, I'll take anyone. It doesn't matter.
As far as sales are concerned, probably Walking Dead.
Right.
And I say that, and I have a complete run of Walking Dead because I was in a comic book store when it first debuted. I was working in a comic book store when it first debuted. Outside of that, because it's a story that's you could take the zombies out of it and put giant cockroaches in it, wouldn't matter. It's a good story overall, and it's a good story for people to read. My wife doesn't read comics, but she likes Walking Dead.
Gotcha.
And she's read the books. It's not the TV show. She's read the comics.
Mm-hmm.
That and Invincible was probably the most lucrative. Well, as far as longevity, Spawn's still going at 300 issues, which is amazing. And Eric Larson's Savage Dragon. If you asking me what the best book is, I would tell you it's Savage Dragon.
I was about to say, what wasn't Savage Dragon was one of the best books that they ever put out?
Because Savage Dragon is, and I'm Zeus. Zeus always called me the bastard son of McFarlane and Eric Larson.
Yes,
but I mean, Savage Dragon's just amazing and was amazing.
Yeah, I love Savage Dragon. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm still reading Savage Dragon. I have a subscription and I'm getting new comics and I haven't read. I'm probably 3 or 4 years behind on reading, but I still am up to date on Savage Dragon.
Nice.
Now we also met Eric Larson.
Oh yeah.
Jay was nowhere near as giddy as he was when he met Liefeld. No, and I wasn't nearly as giddy about Art Adams, and Art Adams is holds a place close to my heart too. So, well, now, but also on the flip side, when you said that you had that art for him, and you had to run back to our table to get it, the Fantastic Four cover, that you did.
Yeah,
he was excited.
Yeah, I mean,
he was excited. He loved it.
Yeah, and as far as Eric Larson, as far as meeting him, he was always a super guy to talk to. Watching him draw is always a pleasure because he holds the pencil different than everybody else.
Mm.
But that Savage Dragon is just an amazing book as well.
Yeah,
But as far as longevity, though, Walking Dead has probably been the most lucrative.
Right.
Mm.
Cool.
But
I remember when we were at the comic book store that, like, anytime, when people were like, when people would come in and they were, looking to buy a comic and they weren't really comic book fans, the Walking Dead was one of the ones I could say, look, you buy this first trade, this is the first 6 issues. If
They
you
were
don't
into
like
it, yeah.
If you don't like it, bring it back. We'll buy it back. Don't mess it up. Bring it back.
Right.
You read that. Nobody ever brought it back. People come in.
Is that good? Yeah, is that good? Yeah.
And it's also,
I've only collected a few issues of Walking Dead. I never got into buying the whole books. It's a shame. I should have bought it.
Well, the trades got so cheap. The trades were $10 for a long time.
Yeah, the first trades that was an easy sale at a comic book store, was the fact that the trades were $9 or $10, and it was the first 6 issues. And if you're not hooked by the first 6 issues, then you don't like it, bring it back. I mean, it was a guaranteed sale, and we sold a shit ton of them. And I mean, it's what it is now. Image has had some really great titles, especially in the last 10 years or whatever. At that there's a book that it was sporadic coming out called Copperhead, and it was about a space sheriff. It was about another planet, and it was a really good book. But it just, you get to like issue 18, and the creators just kind of trail off, and it's like they might put it out, they might not.
Didn't we meet the writers?
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean,
didn't the guy that did the first 6 issues, didn't the guy that drew the first 6 issues of Walking Dead, didn't he work on that some?
No, that was Fear Agent.
Okay.
That was Fear Agent. And actually, Fear Agent, the first 10 issues of Fear Agent was really good. I mean, there have been so many stuff that Image put out that you look at, and I mean, it's Image. It's not all of it's not in your face, and a lot of it's subtle and so forth, especially the last several years. But we all love this. We love this made, again, I've never been out of comics. And it's because of this. It's because the excitement was there of comics. The excitement was there for doing this, and because of the way that let's use Jim Lee. The way Jim Lee would structure a page, or the way Jim Lee would do a splash page, a money shot. Yeah. Or whatever, and it's the opening page of Uncanny X-Men with Captain America. I mean, it's an icon. Hell, I was wearing the shirt yesterday. It's an iconic, scene of Captain America because it's Jim Lee drawing Captain America. It's amazing, and because of that, the art changed. So we're not running through standard. We're doing a little bit more exaggerated art and everything else, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yes, it's not right. Yeah, Zeus and I can sit here and critique artwork all day long about this isn't right and the perspective's off and everything else. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, regular people don't know that. And as long as it's challenging, you read it and it's like, yeah, this makes me want to read more. Like going to see 300 in theaters. Yeah. Afterwards you want to fight a bear when you come out of that movie.
You want to get in a fight. You want to have sex with a woman. That's what you want to do. If you don't have a charge of testosterone, then after you watch the 300, then there's something wrong with you. You're probably dead.
You want
Well,
to
the
go
spray-
out. You want to go out and bite a tree in half. Yeah,
Yeah,
Uh,
I want to spray paint abs in my underwear, right? Yeah.
damn right.
that gave me phantom pains, Jay, thinking about biting a tree.
Uh,
You know,
I had
it's
just read. I had just read because I was telling the guys last week, Jay, that I had just read finally. I had just read the Master Race. I finally caught up to Dark Knight.
yeah.
Dark Knight Returns, and I was like, wow, this thing came out 10 years ago, and I'm just catching up now.
Mhm.
So it's just, and then I was like, okay, it was a good book. It wasn't too bad. The artwork. I mean, like it was what it was. But it was
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Hey Jay, have you ever heard about the this food that they used to feed the Spartans? In real life, back in the day, it was like pig leg or some kind of pork meat, pig blood, vinegar, and olive oil, and maybe a little bit of like salt in it, and it's like boiled and roasted, and it's terrible. It's like
That's,
fucking terrible. So it's like,
Sounds like a blood sausage.
that's very unappealing, Zeus.
yeah, it sounds disgusting, but it's like
Yeah.
that. It's like all the great lines from the 300. It's like, tonight we dine in hell, and it's like the 300 Spartans are like, oh, thank God.
Well, it's definitely not Lexington barbecue. So,
Hey, coming back to the Image stuff, were any of y'all fans of Pitt, the Del Keon? I don't know how you say his last name, but
it's Keon.
yeah.
Oh, I love Pitt. That was the thing, though. I mean, okay, so everyone will tell you, anybody that's a fan or even not a fan of Image will compare Image to Marvel. So, like I said earlier about Silvestri and Cyberforce being X-Men, and Wildcats being X-Men as well, because they worked on the book. Some of the stuff that was coming out was original ideas, and I say that with tongue in cheek, because again, back to Youngblood. Youngblood is a mixture between the Titans and the Avengers, and that's how it feels. That's how it's written. That's how he's doing it, and everything else. Spawn was more. Spawn's an original character. I mean, Spawn is, and that's what has kept it going for 300 issues. Shadowhawk was.
I remember Shadowhawk.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Shadowhawk was an original character.
I still got that #1 issue. I still got Shadowhawk #1.
I picked up a run of like 16 issues of Shadowhawk not that long ago. And the first story arc is really good, and it kind of trails off the second and the third, and you get into a new Shadowhawk. The Images of Shadowhawk done by Keith Giffen was really, really good, but he was still breaking people's back. But when they moved Del Keon, because they offered him, I think it was $9,000 for a 4-page story.
Holy shit!
And it's something around that. It's around I think it's around $9,000 that they offered him for 4 pages to come to Image. And he came over, and when he did, he's again a heavy metal fan. I believe he played in a band and all of this. So he's from Canada, and it is everything that I was part of during that time period. So it's the Hulk without a nose, but it's the Hulk, and it's metal as shit, and it's I mean it is what it is, and the artwork is amazing because he was a modern day Byrne. That's all it was. That's all it was. He's just a modern day Byrne, and so the artwork is amazing, and the artwork's really amazing because of the computer coloring too, because that computer coloring really stepped up on those pages. The slick paper they were using too,
Oh yeah.
Made
Yeah,
everything
some of that
pop.
coloring, when they changed the color process, remember that, Jay? And they went to those hard, it was the overlapping red, blue, and yellow, and that terrible
Yes.
black that was always splotchy and bleeding.
Yes.
I mean, there's some real shit comics from back then, production wise. I mean, they were just, you'd get a, I mean, I would literally, like, there would be like 6 or 8 copies of something, and I would literally sit there and flip through them, you know, because occasionally you could even have 2 pages, you know, stuck together from too much of the black ink.
Yeah.
Because it was a new unperfected process, and they were perfecting it on the fly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hell, some of these printers didn't even know how to deal with it, because because the printers had been running with 40% yellow or 40% cyan and all this, so they were running with that. And this new system, is that's the thing. Mania and K Comics, we go through Kablam printing, and everything we've had done with Kablam, we didn't just release it, but we just did the art of Jason Carr, and all the pages are in color and everything else, and the printing's amazing. And when you sit down and think about it's taken us 30 years to get here. I mean, those early the early 90s, right before computer coloring, before the processes and everything else, when we're on newsprint, we start. I mean, Zeus, you remember Baxter paper? We'd get Baxter paper reprints and all this, and they were slick paper and really nicely done, but still the coloring just wasn't there. We needed that hard computer coloring to do it.
Yeah, because I mean, we had there were great colorists beforehand, but they were constrained by the printing.
Yeah, you can only do so much.
Right, and that's like when you look at Kirby's, the stuff that he drew and hand painted at home. It's like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And even he was still using probably more, a more or less opaque color scheme, just from how he was used to seeing, comics being printed.
Well, we said earlier that kids have it so easy today. Back in the day, especially late 80s, when the black and white explosion started and color was just expensive to do. I mean, unless you understood pre-press, which most of us didn't, unless you understood pre-press, you couldn't get your colors straight when printing them, because they didn't look the way that you wanted them to, because they used a different scale than we did. Now I can open up Photoshop, and the colors I have on the screen are colors they're going to print. I'm going to run it through CMYK. I'm not going to run RGB. I'm going to run CMYK, and I'm going to make sure that I've got 400 DPI and everything else. So,
and if you're willing to pay for it, you can put Pantone colors in.
Yeah, yeah, but you have to really want it.
You have to really want that. Because that's a whole fucking separate roller.
Yeah,
that's probably like a cover color.
But all of these were printed on big industrial printing presses, and that's the thing about comics. Back in the 40s and 50s, Charlton Comics were printing comics, and were using the presses from a cereal company. So the cereal company was printing cereal boxes during the day on these presses, and then Charlton would come in at night and print comics on these big industrial printing presses. This is why it looks the way that it does. This is why color doesn't always stick the way it's supposed to. Color doesn't always fit the way it is, because they were doing things on a string budget. So that the color, the product that you get, and then you've also got printing issues with rollers, and you've got black marks in it and everything else. the printing has gotten so much better.
Mhm.
And it started because of Image. Image wanted their stuff to look better, and they wanted their comics to be printed better. They wanted you to hold. Yes, you were paying more for it. Yes, you were
Right.
paying paying $1 for Superman or Spider-Man. You were paying $1.95 for Spawn. But those
Yeah, but
first
you pay
couple
for
issues,
quality. Yeah.
but those first couple of issues of Spawn were, the interiors were painted by, painters. I mean, the first issue was painted, so you can't go wrong with that color. Yeah, it doesn't. Some pages don't exactly translate well whenever you go into other countries, like I believe the French version is all the colors are off. But of
You
course,
can't expect the French people to know how to print comic book colors. All we know
But,
is a line and a cheese.
but I mean,
Building very tall metal statues.
But that's what it is. I don't remember. I don't remember waiting in line for any of the Image books. I remember going to the comic book store the day that they released the Death of Superman, and me going to the comic book store because, again, I live in the middle of North Carolina, so the comic book stores I went to were never overly busy. You didn't have a whole lot of people. The day that that Death of Superman came out, there was a line out the building. There was a line that snaked around the store. The store wasn't that big, and then there was a line that went down almost all the way to Toys R Us, which is across a parking lot. I mean, because they had just done such media coverage, and again, Image is the reason they killed Superman.
Yeah.
Image is the reason that they broke Batman's back. Image is the reason they did all these things to these characters, because they were trying to reap the reward.
I want before we run out of time, I want to throw one more title out there. So like when we were collecting the Image comics when they were starting out, it was Spawn. That was my deal because I was big into Spider-Man. Spider-Man was my favorite superhero. So of course I went on a little McFarlane thing. Although now years later, I don't think it holds up that well. But that's another discussion. But so Spawn, I was collecting that. My brother Larry was collecting. He started with the Wildcats and Pitt because he was big. He's huge into the Hulk. So he followed Del Kuhn over to that. But there is another title that both my brother and I used to really like a lot because it was so different from other stuff. But the Max.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I remember that page. Oh yeah.
Had a cartoon.
Yeah, there was on MTV later. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, MTV. The Max was okay. So Sam Keith worked for early Vertigo on the Sandman. And Sam Keith has always kind of downed his art. He doesn't like his art, which for being an artist, I understand. But he's always downed his art and so forth. But the Max broke Sam Keith. That's really why you don't see him too much right this very second. He's just, it was a good read. It was weird. It was out there. I actually ate it up. It was no doubt. But it debuts in Darker Image. And when it debuts in Darker Image was supposed to be the Max, Rob Liefeld's Blood Wolf, which was just a ripoff of Lobo. Death Blow, which was Jim Lee trying very hard to be Frank Miller. And Pitt. Those four were supposed to be there because the original artwork had all four of them on. And then Pitt went on its own. So and then the Max debuted from it. But yeah, I mean it was a good read. It, like I said, it was weird. I ate it up. and everyone at that point started drawing because of Sam Keith. Everyone at that point started putting their characters in bell-bottom pants and all this because of the artwork, because it was all it was definitely his art style was definitely different than what we were used to, especially with the image creators. Because I mean, if you look at the image creators, Rob Liefeld again, like I said, has no formal training. He drew, what he wants to draw, and if it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. It's what it is. McFarlane, has art training, but he wanted to be a printer, or he said to be a printer. But you look at his artwork, and the early part of Spawn doesn't hold up, but I mean, some of that stuff still does. The Spider-Man stuff still stands by. You can stand by it. Eric Larson has changed his style now to where it looks more Kirby, where the original style was great and was very detailed and everything else. Jim Lee is a god. There's no doubt. Jim Lee's all slick, and everything is just straight and everything else because he was pre-med before he became comic guy. So I mean, all these guys, and one of the people that I've said his name, Willis Portacio. We haven't talked about him at all because his book was called Wet Works, and his book was his book was late, like by years, and Wet Works' first couple of issues were really really good. I don't. Yeah,
everybody was wearing like a face mask.
Yeah, everyone was wearing it was armor. Everyone had they were all covered in like gold armor, and they were all military guys. And I mean, like I said, the first couple of issues were really good. I didn't stay on the book. After hold on, I think I probably stayed on the book for probably 8 months or 8 issues. But I mean, he's one of the Image founders as well, but something happened in his family and he had to take some time, so he was dealing with it. But there was also guys, Dan Fraga, who worked for Rob Liefeld, and then I cannot think of what his first name is. Metabat did a book called Cybernary for Jim Lee, and he died of leukemia. I mean, like suddenly.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that artwork was metal as shit too. And so it's like, this is what I need. I need this in my life. I need, chick with big tits and horns coming out with swords and killing cybernetic guys. I needed this. This is it. And but I think he was from the Philippines. But I mean, you can't go wrong with this stuff. Honestly, you can go to comic book shows and pick them up. You can pick up books like this for $1. You can pick about 50 cents. You can, you might not be able to find a Youngblood #1 or a Wildcats #1 for that cheap, but you can. They're everywhere, and it's stuff that needs to be seen. It's stuff that needs to be read. It's stuff that I love all of it because it reminds me of a simpler time. It reminds me of a time before I had to pay a mortgage, and and all of this where I had time to sit down and draw all night long and so forth, and I just don't have that time now. So I mean, that's why. I mean, I went back and bought the Image creators. Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee went back to Marvel in '97 to do Heroes Reborn, and I went through during the pandemic and bought every issue of every book, and it's sitting here. It's sitting here next to me. It's 64 issues. But I went through and bought all of them because I want to read them from start to finish, because I listened to Rob Liefeld's podcast about what he was doing at the time period and some of the stuff that Jim Lee was doing and all this. And I was like, yeah, I've got to know. I got to read this stuff. I got to go back and read it because I didn't read it in '97. So, but it's definitely a 30th anniversary of that has has just really modernized comics and really put us forward and said, this is an art form, you should love it. And a lot of us did. A lot of us still do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Amen to that, brother.
Hey, one more question before we go. So you still read like current comics coming out, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what do you think is a quality current comic for people to check out? Because most stuff doesn't seem very worth the effort, in my opinion. But
when Marvel got Star Wars back, the first couple of issues or the first story arcs of Star Wars with the Marvel stuff, whenever they got it back, was really, really good. The stuff right now is going on. Transformers from IDW. IDW is getting ready to lose the license to G.I. Joe. And Transformers with Desolation and Infiltration, and there's a couple of trades. Those Transformer books are incredible. And if you're a fan of Transformers, you should read them because it gives you more of an in-depth feel of them being here and us not knowing they're there. The whole robots in disguise thing. There's a lot of really good books out there. If you're on the sick and twisted side, then you can check out Ed Piskor's Red Room, which I bought, which is really sick, and it's Outlaw Comics, and it's great. It's like murder. It's like murder on the dark web for fun and profit. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of
definitely pick up the upcoming trade paperback of Tales of Insanity.
Yeah, go to Mania and Cake at Facebook and tell us that we're awesome. I mean,
that's a junior line right there.
Well, we've got
You've got an Etsy shop now, don't you? Or
well, I think we do. I know that you could follow us on Facebook, Mania and Cake Comics. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter, I believe. Jason usually runs most of that, so I don't pay much attention to it. Yes, we had an Etsy shop. I'm not really sure if it's still there or not. You want to know the truth?
I'm trying to find it.
That's the thing. We have the cheapest commission rates around. We'll draw anything, even if it's morally apprehensible. And if you come to a show and you talk to us more than 5 minutes, those guys will draw anything. But yeah, I mean, I always start all over the Facebook pages that when we're going to do a show that I always, and this is actually this kind of started with Zeus. I always started out with the often imitated, never duplicated, world famous Mania and Cake Comics.
That's right.
Nice.
Because we have had plenty of imitators for doing what we've done, and none of them can get close to us.
No, I mean, what we started. I mean,
we were doing fan art, colored fan art for anybody else. We were doing colored 11x17 prints for anybody else. We were
the only fucking dudes that were getting our name, repped by MMA fighters.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
nice.
Yeah, and I found pictures of that earlier this week. So I mean, just all kinds of stuff. I mean, we had our logo on people's shorts and everything else. So I mean, we know what we do. Like I said, we cheapest commission rates around. But
Etsy.com/shop/man-eating-cake-comics was the Etsy.
No, like I said,
keep it simple.
Hey, have you thought about maybe selling some of the comics on your Etsy, like the physical comics?
Well, here's the rule with our comics. If you get in touch with us on Facebook or Twitter or any of that, you can get our books through it. When we started the Etsy shop, it was Jason's vehicle. It was Jason's vehicle primarily for sending our shirts, because we have a TeePublic store for our shirts.
Oh, okay.
And
I was just about to ask you if you guys got any good merch to sell.
And so we found another printer for our shirts and everything else. Well, I believe the printer is shut down now.
Shit.
But we had found a printer, and so he was like, well, we need an Etsy shop, and we put them on there because for drop shipping it was really cheap, and it was making us money and it was making them money, and people were getting shirts cheap, and so it was awesome. But then I believe Jason said that they sent him a message and said that it shut down. But yeah, you know, I'm gonna have to go into Etsy and figure it out, because I need to put some sketch cards up there, sort of like you do, Pedro.
Oh yeah.
And all this. So yeah,
Yeah, you do amazing sketch cards. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, you do as well.
Oh.
I've dug all the ones that you've sent me. So.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and me doing those GI Joe and ones that cured me of wanting to do that again.
Yeah. Oh no. Well, I said something to someone the other day. I was like, if that guy's drawing at 2.5 by 3.5, I know exactly what that is, and I don't envy him at all, because I do it at shows. I do it at shows for 30 minutes of sketch card. Yeah.
Well, we were, and we were the only guys that started doing free sketches on a comic book cover size piece of paper. We cut down huge amounts of paper to fit inside a bag and board, so that you could get, we could do
6.25 by 10.25.
Yeah. You could get your free sketch and put it into something that wouldn't get messed up.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we were, we're world famous. Someone scoffed at me about it, but they were definitely world famous. There's no doubt.
They're not just super. They're not just famous. They're super famous.
Super famous. Oh, yeah. Hey, Jay, thank you so much for coming on the show again.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on.
Oh no, thanks for having me.
Nah, this is awesome, man.
Hopefully next
talk
time,
all day.
Hopefully next time I come back, I'll have the books that are in production finished.
Oh, that's cool. We can easily talk comics all day long, man. This is some interesting stuff that we're getting into, man.
I can tell you about comics that you've never heard of.
Oh, I'm sure.
And be sure to check out that YouTube channel Jay mentioned, the Cartoon Kayfabe. Was it Cartoonist?
Cartoonist Kayfabe.
Yeah.
They're huge. They're huge fans of comics. They're huge fans of wrestling.
Yeah. They do mix in the vernacular in the videos. Yes.
Yeah.
They just when they open up those like art books and stuff, and they just show you everything, and they talk about stuff, and it's just a lot. They're really nice videos.
Well, I can tell you that whenever they did the artist edition Jim Lee X-Men, I wasn't going to shell out $150 for one, that it's sitting here. They showed us the artwork, and I was like, yeah, that's it. I gotta have that. That's amazing. So
that's how it happens. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff, man.
Shout out to everybody. Yes, a shout out to Brian Bell for showing up in the chat room earlier. Thanks everyone watching. Everyone Jay, you got anything else to plug, like coming up? Any conventions and stuff?
Well, I don't know that I'm going to go do the show next week.
Right.
But Free Comic Book Day, we will be at the Comic Mon store in Salisbury, North Carolina. We'll be there all day doing free sketches. Again, we have cheapest commission around because it's free. But we, it's free sketches to everybody. It's not just kids. It's not just one. There have been times where Jason and I both had 3 or 4 sketches on the board at the same time, drawing for people. It's an all-day event. Go out to your local comic book shop and pick up free comics. And if you happen to be in North Carolina, come by and see us, because you can't go wrong hanging out with us. Your favorite world famous Mania and K comics.
Play Stump the Artist.
Yeah, come out and play Stump the Artist and
see how accurate Jay and Jason can draw. Well, Jason can't. Yeah, he's lost. but Jay and I could usually reproduce vast majority of comic book characters just on memory alone.
Yeah, I might not know costumes that they've done in the last 5 years or whatever, but I can pull a Better Bill out in a hurry.
That's right.
Oh, I love Better Bill. Awesome.
Thanks everyone for listening. Check y'all next time, and adios.